Yes.
Yes.
Good. So as you all know, bee decline, or as I hope most of you know, bee decline has been a big issue over the past couple of years. So bees are very, very important, and I'm sure most of you, since you are master gardeners, know this. They are one of the biggest pollinators. They pollinate millions of agricultural crops each year, and of course, they pollinate many of the plants that we rely on for food. They not only pollinate crop plants, but they also pollinate wild plants. And then they play they're a very vital part of our ecosystem. They support the growth of trees, flowers, and this serves as food and shelters for other organisms. So, of course, keep in mind that without bees, our gardens would be bare and our food supply would decrease. And if you all have any questions as I'm going along, please feel free to ask. So, the importance of pollinators, 90% of plant species rely on pollinators to reproduce. This seed, it happens by transporting pollen from one plant to another. Pollinators help plants survive and produce about 1/3 of our food supply. Plants are used to create medicines, they prevent soil erosion, and then they also produce our oxygen. And if you didn't know this, globally, pollinators contribute more than $217 billion to the global economy and $24 billion to the US economy each year. So Hymenoptera, this is a order. So this is basically like a classification of different species. So like our butterflies and moths would be in Lepidoptera, but bees, sawflies, wasps, and ants are in Hymenoptera. So this is a very large order of insects, which includes many species of, as you can tell, different bees, sawflies, ants, and wasps. This is one of the most diverse insect groups with over 130,000 species recognized, and then there are many more that are yet to be recognized. So insects are so diverse. This is because they possess a diversity in size, form, and behavior. Also, they are very adaptable. They have evolved to live successfully in many different environments. Also, they have a protective shell and exoskeleton. They're small, they can fly. This helps them escape from predators. Also, they can produce in a large number. Unlike mammals, mammals can't produce in a large number, therefore there's not so many of them. There's about 6,000 or so described species of mammals today. So now we're going to get into the issue of bee decline. So there's many factors involved in stressors that have resulted in this. For example, pesticides, parasites, habitat destruction, nutrition deficiency, air pollution, and climate change have contributed to bee decline. So this, of course, poses a threat to global food security and nutrition. So many people in this area have gotten into commercial honeybees. And honeybees are a very efficient pollinator species. They pollinate almost 2,000 plants in one day. And they're used to pollinate over 100 crops grown in North America. By themselves, they contribute about $15 billion to the US economy each year. And they also not only pollinate crops, but they pollinate wild and native plants. So this is a survey that was conducted by the United States Department of Agriculture. So winter losses are in yellow and the annual losses are in orange. So this basically is showing you how summer losses have exceeded winter losses, and it made the total annual losses more. So summer losses happen because of many factors, which I'm about to get into in a few minutes. But one is climate change. Flowers started to bloom earlier, and it got the bees confused, and that resulted in some nutrition deficiency and losses. So if you want to move to the next slide, this is another thing that has caused honeybee decline over the past couple of years. It's called colony collapse disorder. And this happens when the bees fail to return to the hive, but there's no evidence of dead bodies anywhere. This is rapid losses in large numbers, and then the queen bee and food supplies are left behind. And that has resulted in a lot of bee decline lately. So let's go over the different types of bees. There's a worker bee, a drone, and a queen. The worker bees are infertile females. They really do most of the work. They clean the hive, they nurse feeding larvae, and then guard the hive, of course. And then males are used to mate with the queen. They die shortly after mating, and then the queen is the only fertile female in each colony, and its main function is to lay eggs. So this is a picture of honeybee growth in the United States. So as you can tell, Virginia is number 4 on the lowest bee colony growth. So hopefully we can get that number up if we start education on bee decline. Maine is at number 1, and then Iowa is the lowest at number 10. So climate change has been a big subject a lot recently. So warming temperatures have disoriented plants into flowering earlier each spring. This causes temporal mismatches with pollinator species. This detrimentally affects plant reproduction, and then it also restricts the food resources necessary for pollinators. So 3 ways climate change harms bee populations. 1, habitat loss. Bees are failing to migrate to cooler areas, so they can't establish new hives. Temperature shifts. The flowers have started blooming earlier in the spring. Bees get confused and they don't know when they can get pollen, and then they can't transfer it. So some of our flowers are hurting as well as the bees. And then also diseases are known to be a result of climate change. There's more diseases in colonies. So abiotic and biotic stressors have effects on pollinators like bees. So an abiotic stressor it affects the physical health of an organism. Examples include viruses like Varroa mites, Semipathogens, and then some others. And then a biotic stressor is from the result of living things. So this would mostly be like pesticides. One major pesticide that's used is called Neonicotinoids, and this also affects bee health. So what are Semipathogens? This is a disease that is found in adult honeybees and is known to cause serious colony losses. So this disease is caused by the spore-forming microsporidium. These spores are swallowed by bees and they germinate within 30 minutes. The organism then penetrates the cells of the stomach lining and continues to grow and reproduce. Most of the time, bees get this disease when they clean contaminated combs. Symptoms include declining population, poor honey production, dysentery, and then swollen abdomens. So this is a picture of a very sick colony of honeybees. And sometimes I know at my house we have some honeybees around here, and we'll see some of this on the side of our house. So this shows that some of their bees are really sick. So there's also some other viruses that are vectored by the Varroa mite. This is a parasitic mite. It requires a host to survive. They feed on adult honeybees. However, they mainly feed and reproduce on the larvae. This weakens the honeybees as well as transmits numerous viruses. And this isn't only in honeybees, it can be any bee. Some viruses include deformed wing virus, acute bee paralysis virus, and black queen cell virus. So this is a chart of the different viruses and how they affect bees. So black queen cell virus is one of the most causes of bee decline, as well as deformed wing virus. So black queen cell virus symptoms include the larvae begins to turn like a pale yellow color, and then it darkens to black. It kills the host larvae at different stages of development. And then there has been some studies that relate it to Nosema pathogens, but it's kind of unclear if that actually vectors it. But I know a little bit more about deformed wing virus. I had to write a research proposal for one of my classes about this. So this is a virus that affects bees. It causes pupal death. Bees emerge with deformed wings, so they can't really fly around. They have the inability to fly, so they can't really pollinate flowers or gather food source. And they have shortened abdomens and then cognitive impairment due to brain infection. So as you can see, these bees' wings are very deformed, and they're not going to do well most of the time. It ends up in death. There's not really no cure for it yet. So now pesticides. I'm sure most of you know pesticides are a leading cause in bee decline. So this is a substance that is used to destroy insects or other organisms, and it is detrimental to cultivated plants and animals. The pesticide that is directly linked to pollinator decline is called neonicotinoids. They interfere with the nervous system of insects and cause tremors, paralysis, and death. So the chronic effects include impaired immune function. They can't reproduce as well, and then queens don't survive as well either. So this also affects the habitats of bees. So invasive weed management efforts using herbicides reduce forageability, and then other effects, it impairs their navigation skills. So this is a picture of how neonicotinoids are used. So the farmer puts it on the field, and it's very soluble, so it goes directly into the soil as well as on the plants. So the bees pick it up and then take it back to the hive, and then they get sick and they don't do well. So this is a class of insecticides that are related to nicotine. They act on a certain kind of receptors, and it's very toxic to invertebrates. It's popular in pest control because of their water solubility, which allows them to be applied to soil. They are absorbed by plants and can be present in pollen and in nectar, which makes them toxic to bees. Bees are mostly exposed to these toxic chemicals through pollen, dust, nectar, dew droplets on plants, and of course in the soil. So this is basically the breakdown of neonicotinoids. So I'm sure most of us don't want to look at the chemistry behind it. I know I don't, but just know that it's really bad for bees, and that's why a lot of people like to go organic, which I recommend. So how does neonicotinoids have a direct effect on bees? So adult bees that are exposed to sublethal levels can cause problems with fly and navigation. They have reduced taste sensitivity, and then they're slower to learn new tasks. Also, larvae exposed to sublethal levels of neonicotinoids have reduced survival and pupation, altered metabolism, and reduced olfactory response, so they also can't taste as well. So this is the estimated annual agriculture use of neonicotinoids in the United States. So from 1994 all the way up until 2014, it has steadily increased. Neonicotinoids are cheaper for farmers to buy for their big fields, and that's one of the reasons why the use has went up so much over the past few years. So conservation, how can you help? So many people in this area have bees. We actually started a bee association in Coburn. So if any of you are beekeepers, I recommend you come into that next meeting. You can increase floral resources. So plant bee-friendly flowers. You can provide nesting sites and reduce the use and exposure of pesticides. And of course, you can start a beehive. In other words, become a beekeeper. And then this is a picture of the colors that bees like. So as you can see, they like yellow, gray, blue, purple, pink, a lot of bright colors. I recommend you don't use chemicals on any of your plants. And then there's some plants at the bottom that bees like also. And you can, of course, provide them a water source. So are there any questions that you all might have?